Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our tutorial series about the Minecraft ReplayMod. My name is Slime, and last time we looked at making a sort of intro shot, smoothing out some issues that we had with the camera interpolation. We did that by combining two different renders of the same camera path, one with cubic interpolation switched on and one with linear interpolation switched on. And this time we're going to build even more on that technique of re-rendering the same path. We're going to make a shot here that I think will require 5 or maybe 6 different renders. This is how this tutorial series is going to go. We're going to get more and more complex as we go along. What we're also going to do is discuss sound and the importance of getting your sound track right. In some ways that impacts your work with the replay mod. Now, like I mentioned last time, we have sort of a target shot for each episode, and this time it's going to be something that could be used as an intro to a series or maybe as a trailer shot for a series. So this is the world from my fan server that I've copied off as a backup, and then some of the guys from the fan server helped me out. So we have Max and Bine in this replay, and imagine for a second that we would be doing a series and this would be the trailer for the series. So what we're going to do is create a shot where basically I start running alone across this bridge, and then we reveal. As we go along here, we reveal Max and Bine, so that once we get... let's back up for a bit here and let's just play this replay. You see that I've set a couple of time keyframes, and this is the entire replay that we recorded. So we basically run up to the castle here, and then strike a pose here, and then we send up a firework. Let's pause there. So all I've done beforehand is set up a couple of time keyframes here to iron out the glitching in the start, so we'll be starting our replay around the second time keyframe here. What we're going to do is we're going to show that entire sequence as we run along the bridge here, and we're going to show that in a way that first I run alone, then we reveal Max and Bine as my companions for this whatever it is that we're doing. And then we're going to follow the firework up and then draw the camera back for an overview of the castle. And here we're going to reveal the title of our grand new adventure, which in this case is going to be a ReplayMod logo built right over here. So we have that sequence. And then we have, if we fast forward a whole bit in our replay here to maybe over there, then we... Apparently that was not quite far enough. There we go. So here, after we recorded this sequence, we have our ReplayMod logo set up over here. So we're going to end the shot sort of over here. Now there are a lot of different steps to that along the way, but let's just throw in a position keyframe. This is where we want to end up. And now I've made it 30 seconds long. I don't know if that's going to be a good length. We'll find out. But one thing that is for certain here is this shot is going to be all kinds of complicated, and it's going to require some things that you can't just do with the replay mod in and of itself. So we're going to be composing different renders in our video editing software after we're done with all our replay work. But in order to get there, we need to know what we need to render inside of replay mod in order to have the source materials that we need to composite later on. Let's head back over here to start this whole thing off. So as you can see, there's a bit of glitching going on. We are nowhere to be found. There's ender pearls and fish and stuff all over the place. This is why we have our little anti-glitch time period at the start. And here, as we start, we are kind of running. So I figured a nice reveal would probably be to start looking at the castle like this, with the position keyframe. And then play a little bit. So as we've come across the bridge here, kind of maybe want to be looking. So let's move over here and maybe look like this here. And then keep running for a bit. And as we come to a halt, there we are sort of in our pose. we maybe want to be here. And let's see. And here we have the firework being fired. So that happens around here. And at that point, maybe, whoops, maybe we'll want to, we'll maybe want to be a little bit zoomed back out. So maybe here, so that we can, if we, at that point, have sort of most of the castle in view, but also have the fireworks in view. So we'll probably need to move these around. Also note that here these are now apparently set to linear. That happens sometimes. Mod options, replay mod, config, switch off linear. And then after that goes off, we just want a few seconds for the whole thing to settle. So let's say that this is where our replay ends, and we'll set a final time keyframe there. Now, first of all, we need to take a look at this path. It's going to do things that are not going to be so great because it's just an initial path laid out. So let's play it and see how bad it's going to be. Now, we get a little loop here, and that's fine. We'll accept that. That actually didn't look as bad as I thought it would be. Yeah, that isn't terrible at all. We'll work with that. Now, if you're doing this as something you actually want to use, then you probably want to be tweaking this further on, but for our purposes for this tutorial, that's perfectly fine. Now, we're going to do this in 2 stages. So first of all, we want to complete a shot where we do the reveal part. So we'll do this little run across the bridge and the entire zoom back, but we'll ignore the logo part for now. So for now, we'll just do the shots with the players. So one thing I didn't focus enough on last time is key bindings. You really need to learn the key bindings of the replay mod. You might have noticed something that I've been using that I noticed when I looked at Crushed Pixel's tutorial for the basics is he doesn't bring up the keybinds for play and pause. P is the default key binding for that. That's just playing and pausing the replay timeline up here. Super useful key. If you go out and you actually use the unpause pause button with the mouse every time, you're going to be much slower at it. So use P for that. I did bring up H for the path preview and V for syncing the timelines last time, but there's another important one as well that I don't even think has any other entry point. You have to, or yeah, it might be down here. But anyway, B is player overview, and here you can select which players are supposed to be hidden. So if we do that, now you see that I'm now alone in this replay, which suits me just perfectly because I wanted to start with only me running. So now we're going to start rendering things. So let's render this camera path. Again, default rendering, default quality, that's fine. We'll still do a little bit higher resolution than our native resolution that we're going to end up with in our render because we want that kind of smoothing anti-aliasing function. How far you want to take this is up to you. Obviously, it gets heavier and larger files if you increase this. Some of my Hotbar survival work is rendered in 4K, even though the final thing is in 1080p. Some of it's just this, and some of it doesn't use it at all. There's also the question of name tags. We'll render this without name tags for now. You have all of this stuff to play with if you want to look through the advanced settings for this. But honestly, the only advanced settings I've ever used is the render name tags one and injecting 360 metadata for a 360 video. Anyway, let's render. Okay, so now with that render done, we have a video file with only me running. So I think you can see what's coming here. Let's switch on bind. And now we're 2, and we're just going to re-render this straight up. Same thing, render again. And you can likely guess what's happening now. We are also switching on max. So we have a render with all 3 of us. Let's go ahead and do that one. Okay, so that is now 3 different renders for the same thing. So before we do anything else, I'm going to hit X, another good keybind to know, and hit save as, and call this path bridge run. Let's save that. Okay. So now we'll head over to Sony Vegas, which is my video editor. You can head over to whatever video editing software that you use, and we'll try to composite this in a way to get the desired effect. Shouldn't be too bad. Okay, so now we're in Sony Vegas, and like last time, we're going to take these 3 replays and we're going to basically stack them on top of each other. And just like last time, there's going to be a whole bunch of frames here at the beginning that we want to simply cut away because they're just there for the game to settle, to not show glitches. So split away the beginning and remove that, and now we have 3 different tracks that shows 1, 2, or 3 players. And this is going to be remarkably simple, actually. So let's show myself running for a while, and then we're actually just going to take the end of this and pull it back in, so that about here we can fade that out over the course of a second or something. Like so. And you can see the ghost of Bine coming in there. So the way that looks now is pretty simply Bine coming into the view, and then we'll wait for a little bit, maybe over here, and then do the same thing to that track. So we'll be fading that out over the course of a second. And now if we play that back, we'll see that we have our full sequence of revealing these 2 players accompanying me on the bridge. So that was pretty easy. But that is a sadly very silent fireworks rocket. So the next thing that we're going to discuss for a little bit here is sound. Now, ReplayMod video files, renders from the ReplayMod never include sound because of the way the Minecraft sound engine works, and it's apparently extremely hard to get that to work reliably in rendering to a video file. That is a pity because we really want sound. Maybe if I had recorded this session that I did with Bine and Max while we were running, then I could use the original sound from that video file. However, I didn't, and that's also only possible if you're running things in real time, which you might not want to, especially for a time-lapse, but you might still want sound. Actually, you often still want sound. So back in the replay mod, fortunately, there's a very, very simple fix for this, and that is... So if I open my options and just put my master volume to 100 here, and then I'm just going to simply hit play camera path, and now listen to the sound. So we do have sound effects when playing back a replay. Now the frame rate is not smooth and there's all this user interface stuff on top, but we do have the sounds. And that is all that we need, really. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a 4th video here, and it's not going to be a ReplayMod render. It's simply going to be a screen recorded session off of playing this file. So basically, we go to the start of this replay, wait for it to load, which, yes, is an annoying part of this. What we're going to do is I'm going to put my marker at the very start of the keyframe track, and then I'm going to hit play and then immediately hit pause again. And that is because sometimes you get a bunch of sounds when you start the replay that can remain until even after this little initial settle period has been done. Then basically we're going to put our marker somewhere in between here, and we're going to hit record on our screen recording software. Obviously I'm already running mine because I'm recording this tutorial, and then hit play camera path. Now it doesn't matter how much this glitches in terms of frame rate and stuff, because the sound recording is going to be all that we care about, and that is going to be fully intact through this. And as we get to the end of this, we can turn off our screen recorder and head back into our editing software. Which is where we are now, and now you can see I've added my screen recorded session here as a 4th video. Let's for the moment collapse these tracks a little bit so we have some more space. I'm used to working in a larger screen than this, but let's just take this video and drop it in. Now you can see that I get several tracks here, and one of them, this lower one, is actually going to be my commentary track, which I don't need in this case. So let's just keep these 2. we can clearly see where all of the loud sounds are. So this one is when the replay gets started, and here is probably a click that you can see, and then over here we pretty clearly have our firework. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to find the point where the marker on the keyframe track passes the first keyframe, which is there. Then we can split away this and pull this all the way back, and we should have a reasonable sync. Now, what I'm going to do after that is simply remove the video, or actually we're going to remove the entire track and be left with only our sound track. And now if we play that back, you can see that we have our smoothly rendered replay recorded with all our nice effects, but we also have our sounds. Now, honestly, the Minecraft sounds seem a bit off. This explosion seems a bit late to me, so I'm simply going to fake that and move that a bit in, so I get better sync. This kind of stuff, hands-on, is stuff that you just end up having to do to get quality up. So there we have it. That is the first part of our video. Now, let's head on back into our replay mod to figure out what to do with that logo. And now we need to figure out how to get this logo shot, which we just found out is like way over here at 19 minutes in the replay. We can't naturally get this in somehow, because that would mean a time lapse of me building this logo, which is not what we wanted at all. We do notice that here it's all done. So at this point in time, if I remove myself, the other guys have left the server at this point, here is the shot that we want. So if I set the camera in this keyframe, that's exactly what we're looking for. How about we just remove this keyframe there then? And how about we remove that keyframe and set, and actually let's remove all of the keyframes and just replace them with this keyframe. That will mean time will stand still as we run this camera path, but if I just play it now without playing the time, we'll see that we are, well, glitching a bit, but we're also playing the camera path back, looking at nothing down here, but now also getting the logo in. So that seems pretty promising. We could probably do something about that. If this was the logo for our series, then that should be a nice shot of our logo appearing. So let's render that one too. Okay, now we've done that, we're back in Sony Vegas, and we have another replay track here that we can put in. Here, I'm gonna move that one up here. And then we're simply going to, we need to cut away the start of this, but it's easy to do that because we can just align the ends of these and move it way back over here. So let's find a reasonable place here. At this point, we really want the logo to start appearing. Here is our firework, and here the firework has ended. So let's maybe pull this one back and fade it out over a second around there, and see how that looks. Well, that's decent, but it still has a problem, and that problem is, if we look closely here, well, the main characters of our movie disappear. Down here in the left-hand corner, there's supposed to be three dudes standing around in front of a castle, but they disappear. And now we're solidly in the realm of video editing, but there's one more technique that's very useful here, and that is just simply masking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert yet another video track over here. I'm going to duplicate this video clip with all three of us, and then we're going to pull that out to the very end of the video. Now, I've just ruined all of the nice work that we just did, because this now shows us instead of the logo. However, let me open this, which is the pan and cropping tool in Sony Vegas. I have no idea what this will be called in your video editor, but it definitely has something like it. I'm going to switch on a mask here, and I'm going to simply draw a little mask around here. So now we're saying that this part of this video is all that we want to show. Okay, well that looks good. Now we have both the replay mod up here, and also us three down here. So that looks like a pretty decent try. Let's play all of that to see if that's our final shot. Well, to be completely honest with you, that looks pretty good, but it's pretty far from impressive as well. We have a 21-second long video sequence here, but it's really failing to impress me here. The missing piece, in my opinion, is that the soundtrack is terrible. If we play it again, we can hear that the only thing that you can hear is our steps on the bridge and then a firework rocket. Not exactly something very interesting. Now, in terms of adding a soundtrack to this, we have to discuss a few things with our copyright systems, laws, and YouTube. You might think that it would be a great idea to just go out and take some cool music that you know about and add into this, and it would be awesome. And it might be awesome, but it would also be infringing copyright. Now, I use a lot of music in my Let's Plays and in my videos, and all of that is something called Creative Commons. Creative Commons is a license that some creators put on their music or other creations that lets others use that creation under certain terms. The one that I use most commonly is called Creative Commons Attribution, and it basically means that if you use that thing, you have to give them credit. And that's why if you go down to the description boxes below my videos, you'll find a list of the music of the musicians who made that music and links to their websites or their SoundClouds pages or wherever they prefer, really. And not only is this required for the license, it's also a pretty bloody decent thing to do. Now, finding music, finding good music, finding suitable music is a whole chapter of itself, and it's really out of scope for this tutorial. A very, very effective way to bring power to something is to sync up visual events with audio. That's why if you go and look at a trailer for a movie, you'll find that the music is in sync with things that go on inside a trailer. But anyway, I found an introduction sort of medieval thing from a composer called Tristan Lohengrin. So we're going to use that. Let's pull that into yet another track, and immediately it's apparent that this thing is too long. But what you can do is you can edit the sound, and I'm going to show you a quick way to do that. So that's how the thing starts, but if we use that and pull in the end of this song, then it will end like this. That's no good. Now is the time where you need to know a thing or two about music. Music is based on repetition, and you can often fade from one piece into another if you do it in the appropriate way. Now, I'm not going to teach you music theory in this video, but I'm going to tell you that if we split this song here and then overlay that all the way back to the beginning, or at least almost, then we can fade between these tracks without much difficulty. So let's move that to a different track and place these two so that they are pretty much exactly in sync. And then move that back over so we get a crossfade. And let's try that out. That's decent, but it's not entirely good, because the ending seems to happen a little bit early, and also there's a big smash in the music. And that sadly happens right as the rocket is shot up, rather than right as the rocket goes off, which would have been nice. So, editing video, for me, is a lot like this. That's how I spend my days, and that's probably what you need to do. You need to be super detailed, and you need to be playing tiny little sections, clips of the video to figure out if it's good or not. So I've cut away a piece here. I've tinkered with it for quite a while, and in order for this video not to get too long, let's keep it at that. But what I've ended up doing is moving the music slightly, but then also cutting away a little bit of the start of the replay, just to make sure that there isn't empty space and only step sounds there. there are certain things that you should keep in mind here. One thing is, if you select your music carefully and then build a shot around it, it's very easy to sync nicely to things, especially since in ReplayMod you can manipulate time. So if you have certain time stamps that you know that you want to hit certain places, you can just slow down the replay by a tiny little bit, less than you will actually notice. Just move a timestamp where you need it. Composing shots like this is something I do even with a normal recorded video cut in a Let's Play, and you can actually see that if we take a look at the portal transition from Glass Core 11. Swiftness, here we go. Hotbar, enter pearl on, and enter the end. So even in the initial video, music had started that, one, produces a feeling of a kind of a tense music that sort of builds some tension for what is to come. But it also is started at the point where it will sync up with things happening later in the replay. And of course. Alright, so now we're back in the replay mod, and I've saved this sequence as a logo. It's the same camera sequence, but with different timestamps. And we're going to use another keybind that you might find useful, that's C, to clear all the keyframes, and we're going to start over. So I promised you that would also do sort of a time-lapse of time-lapses thing. And just to make things simple, we're going to do that by doing a time-lapse of me building this logo and messing up and having to use commands to move it and all kinds of things. So let's find the start of that. Okay, so I've found some place that is a rough estimate of where the sort of building process starts. Now, we could just make let's set a time keyframe here, play the entire build process that we know is ending, well, it starts at 10:20 and ends somewhere at 19. So there's a 9-minute build going on here, which isn't terrible to make a single time lapse up. But if I did that, it would be very much a blur of movement. You wouldn't see much of the actual building. So let's say you wanted to actually see some of what's going on. So yeah, okay, I've found some place to start building and then go on and so on. So let's say we want to run this at 4 times speed. Whoops. Then that sequence becomes a little more than a second, 2 seconds actually. So this time I'm not going to care much about what happens at the start of the sequence because we're going to fade in this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But let's say we want to start our time lapse here. We're just going to make a single smooth motion showing several pieces of this build. And let's say we wanted to make it over 20 seconds, give or take. And we want to end up maybe looking here on the other side. So let's put a position keyframe here, and then let's say we want to sort of be out in a little bow. So at 10 seconds we kind of want to be straight behind this to get a little bit of an arc going on. Nice. So let's simply play this along and see how far we get for those 20 seconds. Since we're running at 4 times speed, we'll run 4 times 20 seconds. So we actually have 80 seconds of in-game time going on here. And that gets us that far, roughly. So, okay. We got... We didn't even get a full E. But, you know, that's a start. So what we're going to do is we're going to render this path like it is. Nothing else. And now we have that, and we know we want to get in 19 minutes, and we know we want to do this in a series of cuts, so to speak. So what I can do is I can open this time keyframe and look at the index, and we know that we go 1 minute and 20 seconds for each of these that we do. So we want to skip a little bit ahead to not show the entire thing. So let's maybe add 3 minutes to this, straight off. So now the timeline is showing that something is wrong because time is going backwards here, but that's fine because we'll be adding 3 minutes to this one too. So that one ends up at 14 minutes instead. And now we can play that. And you see that, oh yeah, I've gotten a little bit further along, but it's the same motion that's going on, so that's pretty good. Things are still looking pretty solid here. So let's render that one too. And now we have that one. You can probably guess what's going to happen next. Yep. Let's go to 3 more minutes. And then this ends up at 17 minutes. And then we can play it again to see how it's going. And at this point you can see that I had to move the entire thing because I was about to hit the roof. And maybe that's the sequence that I want to include in the time lapse. Maybe otherwise it becomes completely inexplicable what's going on. Okay, so I've done a bunch of iterations here, moving these keyframes back and forth a little bit to find one that I think syncs up with the time lapse pretty good. So there you have the one that we're going to actually use. So let's render that one. So now I'm adding 2 more minutes to these, and then maybe that will be close to the end of it. So yeah, now we have built the O in the mod, and then we're building the D. Very close to the end. I'm actually going to move this just a few seconds more. Okay, back into Sony Vegas. If you've been following this along, you probably know roughly where this is going. We're stacking these on top of each other. And then we're basically going for the fade from one to another at roughly a quarter of this thing. So maybe we want something like that. And then basically I'm going to just squash them together a little bit like this, and then I'm going to move them all onto one video track so I can crossfade them simply. And where's the last one? It's over here. So we get that, and that gets us a draft for a final cut in sort of a timeline of timeline, a smooth motion through 4 different timeline versions. And that's the final shot that you will be doing this time. I hope you enjoyed this. And next time we're building even further on this, even more advanced use of the replay mod. We're going to delve into what a replay file actually contains and be even more advanced in reusing the same replay path to do very interesting things in different replays. My name is Slime. I'll happily answer any questions you have about it this far in the comments, and please do leave a like on the video if you feel that it helped you out. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.